First Thessalonians chapter 5, we got to keep in mind the Thessalonians were Hebrew people for the most part. Okay, so let's look at what Shaul, or Brother Paul, as they call him, says in First Thessalonians chapter 5 to his people. He says, "But of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of Yahuwah so cometh as a thief in the night." Okay? If you read the rest of Joel chapter 2, you will see what he means by it coming as a thief in the night. Okay? But he says that he has no need to write unto them about the times and the seasons. So why is this? Because these people, again, were Hebrew people he's writing with for the most part, and they had been keeping the times and seasons and the feast of Yahuwah since their birth. And they understood the times and the seasons. These people saw Yahushua crucified on the Passover. These people, for the not all of the assemblies, but we know that the disciples saw Yahushua when he was on the day of first fruits, when he was going to rise to the Father. We also see that they were there on Shavuot. They were there for the appointed time. We look in the book of Acts and we see that Shaul is constantly traveling all over Asia Minor and all these various places, and he will say in different situations, "I must go to Yerushalayim to be at the feast," over and over and over. And we see that he goes into the synagogue on the Sabbath day to reason with his brothers. So Shaul is connected with his brothers, and he's telling them here, you don't have any reason that I should write to you about the times and the seasons in which Yahuwah operates. And then he says in verse 3, "For when they shall say peace and safety, and sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief." Why are they not in darkness? Because in the beginning of chapter 5, he says, "You are not ignorant, brothers, concerning the time of the seasons. I have no reason to write to you about these things." Then he says, "You are children of the day and not of darkness." And then verse 6 he says, "Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. For they that sleep, sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the light." And he continues on. But my point being in this is that he is telling his brothers that the times and seasons have something to do with the coming of Yahuwah. And as I've just presented to you concerning the feasts and how Yahushua fulfilled them, it is logical to think that indeed he was correct. Let's look at the book of Matthew 24 now. Matthew 24. This is talking about the coming of Yahushua, because we are preparing, my friends. The bride is preparing herself, making herself ready. And we know that as this time approaches, which is a Hebrew idiom for the term, no man knows the day or the hour, because it falls between that 48-hour period, and they're watching for that new moon. We know the prophetic significance. We know the prophetic significance of the two witnesses having to establish the matter. We know these things. We understand these things. So let's look at Matthew chapter 24, because the Christian church has taken what is a doctrine, and an original doctrine from the Hebrew people, which was given by Yahuwah, of a resurrection, and they have turned it to a great escape plan called the false rapture. Well, they don't call it false, but I'm telling you it's false. The word rapture comes from the Latin word rapturo. You hear these silly preachers on the television, they tell you about the rapture, they say, well, you need to get yourself a Catholic Bible, and you'll see this word rapturo in it. Well, my friends, rapturo being from Catholic origin, being Latin, we know that that is not Yahuwah's inspired word. These are the same people who gave you Jesus, who gave you Christmas, and gave you Ishtar Sunday being the name of a false god. I want to tell you something, friends, and this is going to all you Christians out there who are listening to me, who have been taught this thing. I was taught this thing too. I wanted to believe in this silly rapture when I first tried to begin on my way on repentance. I wanted it for my son, my 2-year-old son. I wanted it for my wife. I wanted to escape all these things. I wanted to get snatched up out of here. But my friends, this is not what the scriptures teach. And I'm going to show you what the scriptures teach. But I'm going to also show you that this rapture is a lie. It was fabricated. And I'm not going to go through all the history of this thing, but we know that it began with a bunch of false prophets trying to move in the spirit of Yahuwah, except they didn't call him Yahuwah. They called him Jesus and God and Lord and all these various things. But we know that this came about through visions that this woman had, and et cetera, et cetera. We know that the Schofield Bible basically put out its propaganda on the term, on the use of the rapture. We see that there are false prophets all over TV. And these men, and this is the thing I want you to think about. These men, most of them are older than I am. I've studied the scriptures longer than I have. Yet, they still lie about this thing. And that's what concerns me, because you're either uneducated and you love Yahuwah when you're studying His Word and you're going to rejoice when Revelation comes, or you may be one of those who are uneducated who just despise Yahuwah, or you're going to be an educated liar. And essentially that makes you a devil in the eyes of Yahuwah, because He told His people to love wisdom. He says wisdom cries out in the streets in the Proverbs. Who will hear it? I mean, He continuously, Yahushua tells us that we should be asking questions. He said, ask and it'll be answered to you. Seek and you'll find. And He goes on and on. So in Matthew 24, Matityahu 24, we're going to start with verse 24. For there should be false messiahs or Christ and false prophets that shall show signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible they should deceive the very elect. So we know that there are going to be people manifesting signs and lying wonders, that we should hold true to the truth, my friends. We got to hold on to the word of Yahuwah, because if it were possible they could deceive the elect. Now the Christians think that they're the elect. They think this word applies to them, because see, the New Testament, in our scriptures we have the Hebrew version for the Old Testament, the Greek for the New Testament. What they don't realize is the Septuagint was penned before the New Testament was, and we see that in the Septuagint, which is the the Greek translation of the Old Testament that was done, that these words appear, that the word elect appears, and the word ecclesia appears, which they call church. It's a Latin word. There's no reason why a translation from Greek into English should have given you a Latin word called church. And it's not a building. Well, I guess the church, as they want to call it, is a building, but the ecclesia is a set apart people, and it was first used for the people in the wilderness, for for Moshe and the Israelites, my friends, the Yasholites. And we even see this in I believe in the book of Hebrews, that they're called church in King James, which is ecclesia. So we know that they are the elect, that they are the chosen, and all those who are grafted in through the branch, because Paul tells us that we must be grafted in through the branch. So he tells us that if we should see these things, we could possibly be deceived, but not the elect. In verse 25 he says, Behold, I have told you before, wherefore if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth, behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not, for as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even into the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. So he's warning us that before he comes, not only will false Christs and false messiahs come and false prophets, but the Antichrist himself will appear. So we got to keep that in mind, okay? That the world leader of the New World Order will appear before Yahushua arrives. And many Christians will be duped into thinking that this is the Messiah. And the reason they will be is because this false rapture nonsense. Okay, so even as the lightning shines from the east into the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Then he says, For wherever the carcass is, there shall the eagles or the buzzards, birds who prey upon dead things, shall be gathered. Now we're going to touch on this in a second. In verse 29 it says, immediately after the tribulation. Okay, notice it doesn't say immediately before the tribulation. It says immediately after. Now, people don't like to use this because these are Yahushua's words. People like to use Paul's words or Shaul's words because Shaul wrote in letter format. And if somebody writes you a letter, it's very easy to take things out of context and to twist them to your own destruction. People don't like using Yahushua's words for the most part. They don't like this verse because it says, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from the heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Then he shall send forth his messengers, or malach, which is erroneously called angels here, with a great sound of a shofar, or trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to another. So we see that Yahushua can't even come until the moon has turned to blood and the sun has darkened. He can't just come on a day like today. Not a beautiful day like today. He can't just come like this, because that's not the day of Yahuwah. Because the day of Yahuwah is a day of darkness. Remember, Yael tells us that a day of darkness. All the prophets tell us it's a day of darkness, a day of fire. A day, my friends, the great and terrible and awesome day of Yahuwah is at hand. And this is why we sound the shofar, to get you ready, to get you repenting and calling on Yahuwah before that day comes. Because when he comes, my friends, he's not coming in a good mood. He's coming to tear down the walls of Jericho one last time. And we'll go explain a little bit of that in a second.